The year without Marvel is over. It is time for you to return once again to your overlords. Listen, I am simply following in my papa's footsteps. So we are now 2 years and months. It's just been 3 years. Away from the biggest cinematic tentpole in at least the last decade, a franchise that has been adding more and more inconceivable power behind its name, culminating in the highest grossing movie of all time. I don't think you should count your chicks before they hatch, Cameron, because you have at least one person praying for your downfall. I will be live tweeting Avatar 2's box office and I am repeating a joke, cackling myself into a coma when it inevitably tanks cause no one gives a shit about Avatar. Never have I ever seen a brand with the least amount of staying power that Avatar does. I mean, no one was even whispering about it since 2 months after I'm talking too much about Avatar now. So now might be a good time to reflect upon what I am just now dubbing the Gauntlet duology. Now I know that we're supposed to say that we're all so tired of superhero movies, but to be honest, I've never felt that way. They're the modern myth, but I'm actually brave enough to stand up for the multi-billion-dollar franchise. I love the mouse, and the mouse loves me. Guess what? It's fun. And actually, I am not worn down by constantly operating out of 10 for the 5 installments that the MCU usually has in a year. I enjoy my empty calories. So take me, taste havers, for I have fully submitted myself to franchisable IPs. Alright, so here's one thing that I will say without a hint of irony though. I still stand by that Infinity War is really cool. It is tight, it's impactful, everybody gets their moment, it moves along briskly but not fast enough to give whiplash, and it just tells a very big story really, really well. Seriously, I even look at the title cards like, art! I love every single grouping of the characters, even how they mix and match a few. Oh boy, I can't wait for Thor Love and Thunder and Guardians 3. They're the best. Just objectively.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Guardians of the Galaxy, bitch.
They did, however, give a lot of gravitas to Doctor Strange very quickly from how he acted in his intro movie. Probably because when they put 2 Iron Mans on screen right next to each other, they realized just how much they were mirroring. But I think what I respect it the most for is the perfect rising tension it has the entire time. It starts with the brutal murder of the longest running opponent to the Avengers, and the suppression of the Hulk, the strongest Avenger.
What?
And Thanos is coming. Is something that hangs over the entire piece, and that sense of dread is never dropped. It just has this constant threat of impending doom just over the horizon that we may or may not ever be able to fight back against. I don't know what that's like. But there's still this little thread of hope that builds and builds and builds across all the different locations, across all the different groups as they all do their different preparations, until it finally culminates in this massive, impactful battle. Just payoff after payoff after payoff. And excuse me if I am just such a sucker for, oh, this character is so evil that even nature itself seems to disagree with him whenever he appears. The tree said, do you think the trees rustle when like Jeffree Star walks outside? Like, I don't feel too great about all this. No. And all these little victories that we get makes the massive loss at the end of the movie all the more impactful. And it kind of is a more impactful choice to end on the lose for the heroes. It's a choice that not many stories make, and subversion is a hell of a drug. That's why so many writers try to do it, even when it goes against their own work. Speaking of the ending, I distinctly remember the credits happening in dead silence in the theater. I think it's a better choice. Another deep-seated theme that I have come to view this movie through is enduring. Enduring torturous, prolonged pain. Again, I wonder what that's like. There are so many scenes where it's just a close-up on an actor's face as they scream in agony for a very long time. And nowhere in the cast is this theme so well exemplified than with the character whose entire backstory is enduring. Even before Gamora is forcibly adopted by Thanos, she still has to endure starvation on her home planet. But it is a lot easier to endure torturous conditions if you're surrounded by people who love you.
We were happy on my home planet.
And then of course she has to go through the process of being a child of Thanos, you know, which doesn't seem too great, but we'll get to that. I mean, everything about Gamora's story makes me cry. I especially want to highlight this scene where she thinks she's killed Thanos. She collapses in on herself, making herself very small. And not to be all armchair psychologist, but to make yourself small like a child means that you are mentally regressing a little bit, trying to physically make yourself this helpless, small thing, putting yourself right back in the shoes of your younger self. And Zoe Saldana has some great face acting, and you can tell that she's crying for a whole cacophony of different emotions. I love ugly cries. Thanos, of course, misdiagnoses this as tears for him, but that's because he's the bad guy.
Duh.
And because I view this movie as enduring pain that ends in a loss, there is no way I couldn't view this as Gamora's movie. And I refuse to look at it through any other lens. It's just so solid that I can't really think of anything that I would want to change about it. Except when Bucky dusts, his arm doesn't. So we can have the payoff that Rocket does get that arm. But at what cost? I mean, you know, it would be the one thing that I would have the mental capacity to change. But it wouldn't be the only thing that I would want to change.
Well, come on, it's those saggy nuts.
From a creating and acting perspective, you do kind of have to get into the heads of your villains to truly understand their motivations. You can't ever play a bad guy like you know he's the bad guy. That's like being in on a joke you weren't invited to. And I think a lot of writers, especially writers at Disney, fall into this trap of thinking that their villain has to think that what they're doing is morally right in order to be made completely sympathetic. Yes, you know, I fixed it. I should have done this from the very beginning. I thought I could do it heatless. What do you want from me? Whereas in the real world, I think all of the most truly villainous actions taken by people are ones that they know are wrong, but they simply don't care because there's such a huge benefit to themselves. And they've rationalized their despicable choices behind wall after wall of delusion. I'm fighting for the real victim here, the cishet white billionaire. Leave Elon alone!
I forgot how to laugh.
But okay, maybe this is a little bit out of the ballpark for criticisms of Thanos, because he is supposed to be this large, intelligent, intimidating force that has basically secured his victory just by believing in it so fucking hard. Really, the poster child for positive affirmations. Manifesting universal genocide. So really, he is this quiet, brooding academic, and nobody else has the strength, nay, the physical nor emotional fortitude to carry out what needs to be done. Which is great characterization for what this self-important, intimidating villain is supposed to be. But the people who created him bought into his ideology.
This universe is finite, its resources finite. It needs correction.
You don't know that! If you need this explained to you in very simple terms, what of the basic resources that you need to survive of water, food, and shelter are non-renewable? If we need more food, we could always go plant more. If you eat meat, guess what? The food naturally spawns more food, basically all on its own. And your home should probably be made out of natural materials so that it doesn't try to kill you throughout your life. Asbestos. And it is only under a system of capitalism that relies on false scarcities to gouge profits that we get results like pouring millions of gallons of milk down the drain every day during a pandemic that has made between 1 in 5 and 1 in 6 children food insecure, and restaurants don't donate 94% of their surplus out of fear of litigation, even when they are more than likely covered by the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Food Donation Act that was passed over 20 years ago in 1996. Or once again, because it would be cheaper to just throw that food away than to pay a line cook a couple of extra hours to prepare it for donation. A line cook is coincidentally the most dangerous profession to have in this pandemic. And speaking of things that we've known for 20 to 30 years that should be common practice by now, the only reason why we do not live off of clean, renewable energy is only because the 1% of people who get unfathomably rich off of big oil will not let it go.
The wind is howling like this swirling storm inside.
We have the capabilities of making green systems so fucking quickly and making them so fucking available and so fucking affordable, but we just haven't put any green infrastructure into place since the founding of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change in 1988 to help not make our planet completely uninhabitable by us simply because of corporate greed and corporate greed alone.
What has the planet ever done for you? Why would you want to save it? Because I'm one of the idiots who lives in it!
Yes, even your copter could be powered by green energy, Thanos. Worked it in. Oh, I just realized I was the green girl during the climate change portion. That worked out. I planned that, and the factoid brought up by almost everyone is that this method of cutting the population in half only brings us back to the numbers that we here on Earth had in the 70s. So what? We're just gonna go through worldwide genocides every 40 to 50 years now to keep up this functioning equilibrium that we have? So that's Thanos' ideology thoroughly destroyed by this snowflake. You see, that's why we don't like global warming. We'll melt. And you know what? Sure, Mr. Mad Titan, I'm sure you're choosing the half that dies in a completely objective and logical and completely unbiased way. And if you didn't pick up on it, genocide is a bad ideology to have. Especially genocide that doesn't work. I mean, when does genocide ever work? Let me debate you so I can debunk mass killings with facts and logic. And reason number 2 why no one should have been swayed by anything that Thanos had to say is Thanos is an abusive father.
It's Kurt Russell!
Easy, babe. That came a lot closer than it was supposed to.
Does anyone have a good relationship with their dad? It is explicitly text that Thanos is an abusive father, but it is exemplified more successfully in like the Guardians films, because we get to see the effects of his abuse. Nebula and Gamora are given the focus in these films while Thanos barely makes appearances, and this frames their abuse as legitimate and as our point of view, so we as an audience know where to align ourselves. Whereas in Infinity War in particular, Thanos is billed as this cool fucking guy who has a legitimate plan and carries it out. We spend so much time with Thanos in this movie. The ending even belongs to him, and it's a happy one. And he's the one that gets the blank will return teaser. And you might come back with the argument of, no, there are multiple places in the movie where Thanos is told to be wrong.
My Gamora.
Oh, bullshit. Asshole! No, you didn't. No, you didn't.
But that's the key word there. Told. Small quips of dialogue do not have as much of an impact on an audience's takeaway from a visual medium like film. The way a character is framed in small, non-vocal choices has far more of an impact on a viewer's final feelings towards that character. And that's how you get things like, oh yeah, I would love to dress up as Thanos during my workouts. And we're gonna sell it right next to the other hero-inspired shirts like Thor and Spider-Man and Captain America, and without batting an eye. I'm sure my young daughter is gonna love it. Human beings' brains do not work off of facts and logic. And that's why there were so many Thanos fanboys created by Infinity War and carried into Endgame, even when we were supposed to feel oppressed by him, by his power, by his abuse, and by his success in genociding half the universe. And this not only has the gut punch of framing two women as abuse without the importance that it deserves, but it frames the abuser as someone who legitimately loved them, even when he literally abused one of them to death. But because this is not only the most successful franchise to have ever existed, but because this is a family feature, that undoubtedly had the incalculable impact on the children who were sitting in the theater next to their own Thanos, who were told, he's only doing this because he loves you. If you have an influence, especially on young people, you have to actually give a lot more of a shit of what you are saying with your work. And that's not just aimed at the writers and the Russos and Feige, but every cog in the machine and the machine itself at Marvel and Disney that this just slid right by. But the movie's out. It's been out for a couple of years now. The best thing that you can do for yourself is watch it in the correct frame of mind when it comes to Thanos. Call him names. Shout at your TV screen. It can't hear you, it doesn't have feelings. If you ever come across a Thanos fanboy, make sure he feels very uncool about being a Thanos fanboy. Shouldn't be too hard. And you can walk away with the caveat that at least Zoe Saldana and Karen Gillan know what the fuck they're doing.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear John.
So Endgame just isn't as impactful? I don't know. It feels more hollow, smaller. Ironic that the movie with like 100 main characters to all keep track of was more individually impactful than the film with like 7. Even down to the minute detail of the time travel dates not being as aesthetically pleasing as Infinity War's location cards, by almost every metric it just feels lesser. And you're really not setting yourself up for success if your opening is expecting me to care about Hawkeye. I know Clint Barton is very cool and relatable in the comics, but Jeremy Renner is not that. It's not a surprise that the best Avengers movie happened without you. Oh my gosh, honey, where have you been? Oh, you know, just like any other middle-aged white man going through a midlife crisis, I bought a sword and had a culturally insensitive moment in a foreign country. The only good part of this movie that even peripherally has Hawkeye as a part of it is when it just becomes a deep space horror thriller for 2 seconds. I guess he's the only one with arrows you can shoot out to reveal them down the tube, which is cool. Alright, just pretend you didn't notice I didn't have mascara on before then. And if you had to get rid of one of the super spies on your team, my money was on Krusty Mohawk.
See what I have to deal with here? 10 years of this.
Black Widow was always a character that had the most depth in Tumblr posts that would analyze the pixels in a GIF. You know the ones. I mean, I've waited for like 10 years to get invested in the MCU's Natasha Romanoff, but they never really seemed to give me enough. She's always in a supporting role, even in her own movie that came out too late.
I just saw
Black Widow.
If this was 2013, I'd be really excited.
Like, there was never an oomph, never anything that made me go, oh my god, I love her. And I've tried. I keep watching these Scarlett Johansson obliterate sexist questions compilations like, oh, quit asking me about rabbit food and how I fit into my leotard without any underwear or my constantly changing hairstyles. Those are bad questions. And every time I'm like, but what else is there? That's not Scarlett Johansson's fault. They never wrote a good character, but Black Widow is just such a reserved and secretive character that there was never really going to be a chance to show off something that was truly endearing for her.
What's the dumb stuff?
Yeah, I don't know, probably like, you know, your character arc.
And no, basic MCU level snark does not count as a character trait because every MCU character has that. And yet it is all too easy to recognize that mama, this is garbage. Just sign up for the TV show Scarlet. Oh yeah, it just so happens that it's the one founding female character that gets sacrificed and whose death is completely overshadowed by the end of the movie. Great. Girl, why are you trying to die so bad? And there's no Nat looking up while she's falling parallel and we have to rely on Jeremy Renner's bad overacting that doesn't even make it into the frame. Wow, so real, so gritty. Now this is filmmaking. I like parallels. I like it when women have agency. When they kill themselves. It's the only time we're ever gonna get agency is when we commit suicide. And why is it that Thor seems to be the one that's the most genuinely upset by Nat's death? You know, beyond just basic man angst.
Go grab your hammer, and you go fly and you talk to him.
And I don't think that he and Natasha have ever even exchanged dialogue. Like, I know they've never had a one-on-one scene together, but I don't think they've ever even interacted in a group setting.
I feel sick. I had too much fun though.
Are you just eating?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
That's kind of a big ball to drop that 2 out of your main 6 characters over the course of a decade never spoke to each other. Natasha's never even spoken to another woman before though, so. I mean, who are we kidding? This is the same movie that had an A-Force moment between a group of women that have never met each other before.
A-Force?
Yeah.
I've never heard of that one. What's that one?
It's an all female led comic book from Marvel.
I'm not ready for it.
The Bechdel test is so alarming because it's such a low bar that nobody clears. And that is to say that the final battle as a whole is, well, it's, oh boy. Let's describe it this way. When you're watching it in the theater and the screen is 30 feet tall and takes up all of your periphery, once the final battle started going, I just thought to myself, wow, I guess I'm just gonna have to wait until I can watch this at home and take a step back from the screen and maybe watch it at 0.5 speed to figure out what's actually going on. And I don't think I should have felt that I was viewing it in the wrong venue. You're not really making a good case for the cinema to be the definitive viewing experience if no one can tell what's happening on your screen. Like, we've had films before that have shown the impact of 2 armies smashing into each other, and it doesn't look as muddled as this. And you know, maybe this is an inescapable problem for Endgame because it does not have two hordes of nameless armies where each individual soldier looks exactly the same, but there's a mass of main, named, important characters that all have a distinctive look, size, and fighting style, who all need particular focus, and you can't slow down because then it wouldn't be snappy enough to be a major action scene, but this just makes it all such a soup of body parts and movement and And we all know that this scene is the most effective as those anime intro parodies. My little brother came up to me the other day like, I think something's wrong with me. I get a headache whenever I watch fast action. And I'm like, honey, it's just eye strain. You're getting old. Can't watch things as fast as you used to. And I think one of the most disorienting things about this final battle is just how little spatial awareness there is. Like, there's this part where Thanos' army is full of tons of leviathans and ships, and it looks like it extends on for miles and miles. There's the main wreckage where the big three emerge from, which also kind of feels like the same place where the sorcerer portals bring everyone back. Then Ant-Man bursts out from right here next to that. The main battlefield is either half a football field or two. I don't know, I feel like it changes in every shot. Ant-Man's van is somewhere over here. The A-Force and Iron Man is all around during the entire battle, but ends up within eyesight of Doctor Strange, who is holding up the water here on the edge, and he has to be close enough to be able to distinguish the one finger, so apparently the VFX team had the entire place mapped out.
For the final battle, our department provided us with an overall map of where the different beats were going to take place, and we staged our previs accordingly. There was a lot of nondescript areas.
But it never feels much greater than the directors just putting the camera in different corners of a 100 by 100 set, just hoping and praying that we don't notice that that's exactly what it is. And it don't never do. It don't never do, what can I say? Listen, all the lighting looks so gray and all the wreckage looks so samey. I have no idea where we are at any point in the fight, and I think that that's what leads to a lot of the feelings of being underwhelmed by this final battle. My brain has to work so much harder to figure out where we actually are that it doesn't have the time for anything that should matter to fully sink in. So if we are to take our theme of enduring in Infinity War, what has it then evolved into in Endgame? Well, obviously, after we have endured so much pain only to lose anyway and get our faces smashed into the dirt, then our theme from Endgame would be to recover and stand up from that loss. Take for instance the parallel scenes of the two captains holding Thanos' gauntleted hand back. Steve Rogers endures until he loses and gets his face smashed into the dirt, while Carol Danvers is not only able to hold back Thanos, but actually rise physically above him and put him in a submissive position. We are meant to be empowered to not only pick ourselves up, but to rise above our hardships and squish them into the dirt. And yet I feel nothing. There's a lot of points during this last third of the movie that I can tell I care about on paper, and I don't even know if it was something that they failed in the execution or with me, or if like the parts are greater than the sum, or even if it was just an intangible feeling that failed to ignite. Like in the Big Three versus Thanos portion, there were so many callbacks that happen in such quick succession, building upon so many previous installments and so many years of work, and that's kind of impossible to find in any other property under any other circumstance. The MCU itself has created language. Language. A language. A language. Language. Not only in this little piece of visual language, but think of how to become Thanos snapped or dusted has now become a part of our daily vernacular. That is amazing. That is a major cultural milestone for any piece of media to ever be able to achieve. Like, imagine if someone could get Keyblade Ward. Keyblade. But when I watch the movie itself, this moment just flies right by. Like, oh, that was cool. And coming back to the A-Force moment, in all generosity, most femme people do kind of have to rely on the unspoken solidarity between women just for survival. So, it's fine. It's fine. By the time it happens in the final battle, I'm so overwhelmed by feeling nothing anyway, so. What's one more moment of feeling nothing? It's fine. I'm fine, okay? I'm not fine. I've cried at multiple of the everyone comes back memes. Not even the movie, the memes. Multiple of them. I've cried at. I've cried at multiple of them. At multiple of them, I have cried. Crawling in my skin. Not the Biden one. Let the record show it was not the Biden one. However, there is an added layer to this theme of picking yourself up that I think truly resonates. And this layer is described most clearly by a quote from one of the greatest philosophers of our time, Yandu Udonta.
He may have been your father, boy, but he wasn't your daddy.
What better rebuttal to the unfair adage of picking yourself up than to say, I should have a daddy to help me.
Hey, honey bunnies. Are you ready for a hoppin' cool announcement?
Seriously, does anyone have a good relationship with their dad? I'm looking for hands. We are filled to the brim with daddies. Drowning in daddies. We start out the movie with Nebula getting her first ever experience having a daddy.
And you've won.
Scott Lang is a total daddy. Rocket has actually been quite the daddy throughout both of these movies.
Okay. Time to be the
Daddy.
And Guru.
Whoa!
James Gunn confirmed that this means dad.
Pinocchio is my little boy.
In his own special way.
Come here. Right here.
Oh, look at this. Here, Bertie. Hey, come here. Come on, do something angry. Come on, do something angry like Rocket. Come on. Give us a little noise. He doesn't want to be angry today. Oh, he's too sweet. He's being too sweet today. In a metatextual sense, Robert Downey Jr. has been deemed the daddy of the MCU.
You know, the journey that Robert Downey Jr. has made, he's the godfather
Daddy.
of all this.
So much so that they even had to give Iron Man a kid just in this movie, just so we could have the dichotomy between a bad father and a good daddy. Oh my god, I forgot that Tony had a whole section where he time travel bonded with his dad. Let's see how this fits in at all with our theme.
I thought my dad was tough on me, and now, looking back on it, I just remember the good stuff.
I don't know, that seems a little too generous for the way we've already seen Tony and Howard portrayed. Learning that your dad got murdered doesn't retroactively make your complicated relationship with him better. But I guess we had to quickly set up the side of good daddies. And that's what this saga ultimately comes down to. An abusive father versus a daddy who is willing to protect us all, no matter the cost. What Tony didn't realize was that he was the suit of armor around the world. And I'm going to be very particular about what it means to be a father versus what it means to be a daddy. We all have some experience with the oppressive force of fathers. Fathers dominating our means of survival. Fathers dominating our politics. Fathers dominating our religion. Fathers dominating our family. But to find a daddy that is nurturing, kind, gentle, and protective, all in a wholly unselfish way, is very rare. One of the greatest tragedies of an unjust world is that not everybody has a daddy. Or keeps one. Because we live under a system that wants to churn out more fathers than they do daddies. That's right. I'm talking about the patriarchal agenda. What are you doing to halt the spread of men across this fine nation? And how dare
They teach in our God-fearing American schools that men are good for anything besides being a hole.
Is that so wrong? Is that not politically woke for you? For all the faults that Infinity War makes in its treatment of Thanos just being this weirdly driven guy, I do appreciate that the thesis of Endgame seems to be, you can't live under a father who is willing to sacrifice you for his success. What you really need is a daddy who would sacrifice everything for you.
And I am
Daddy.
So here I am with a very special person, my sister.
Oh my god! Is this like on Instagram?
So if we have the understanding that Infinity War is Gamora's movie, then it would stand to reason that Endgame should belong to Nebula. But it never really lands home for her. Always coming in second, Nebula. Or third. Or fourth. Or seventh. You know. Even when it just comes down to the basics of screen time, Thanos versus his two daughters are all out of whack between the two films. It starts off nice, once again, with our main daddy being like, well, Pepper, I'm gonna die, but at least I adopted this very nice young lady. And you know, she's trucking along through the middle. Gamora shared a lot of screen time with the ensemble before, and you know, you can still be the emotional core without being on screen for the entire thing. Thanos, maybe share some with the rest of us, eh? But then she gets all tangled up in the time travel stuff, which I don't think works. And then we just lose her for the rest of the film. And nobody comes back around to give us anything to close up her story. I mean, I know contracts were ending and people died, but come on! And oh, wow. Present Nebula kills past Nebula. Oh, what could it mean? I've never seen a metaphor played out so literally before. And that's just the basic Infinity War versus Endgame conclusion I seem to have. Endgame just doesn't pull off all of what Infinity War can do. And that is a hard critique. Endgame had a lot riding on it for being the end of a saga, and Infinity War is all just straight setup, and the endless possibilities that setups set up are always going to be infinitely more interesting than the one canonical payoff.
I don't read, Benedict.
I did spelling for you.
Okay, so I'm going to do something a little drastic here because I simply do not vibe so much with this one element of Endgame that it has forced me to do a rewind. You made me do it. You made me do it, Endgame. So the element that I don't like is time travel Thanos. This is not the Thanos we know. This is not the Thanos that we have history and so much pain with, yet he narratively serves the exact same purpose as if he was 2018 Thanos. And because these movies makes Thanos out to be so uncritically badass, I mean, he's just so awesome that he's able to skip forward 4 whole years in his plan from not even having the Gauntlet forged to complete universal domination with only a couple of hours of binging his future. Like, he's just so smart, you guys. Like, he's just so super fucking smart and tactical and scheming and, like, charismatic and, you know, probably has a massive purple car. I'm so super fucking sorry, but this camera's being a... We're gonna have to downgrade visually right now. Ah, y'all better hold on there, Gary. Mr. Stu. You seem to be breaking the rules of immersion with how OP you are. And this just makes him seem... I got a bead of water on my lips. And this just makes him out to seem like the Russo brothers' super cool OC. Do not steal. Okay. Uh-oh, little thickums on the side. That one was the hardest. So that's fine, right? We're getting the vision. So instead of relying so much on time travel, I'm going to say that we bring in one of the other 3 sources of MCU power into the mix. Just unexplained magic. I swear to God, we don't have to have every single fucking thing in our stories explained and logicked out like a lore checklist. We can have just unexplained magic things happening. Okay. I want to experience a story, not read a fan wiki page. Leave that to the fan wiki page people. So the bulk of this rewrite happens after Nebula retrieves the Power Stone. Everything else can be completely untouched. She doesn't get a glitchy version of her past self. She just goes back to 2023. And congratulations! I just trimmed a whole 12 minutes and 12 seconds off of this slog. You could use it to go towards more Gamora and Nebula character work. I guess that would be what I would want to use it for. Or you could just release us from the theater earlier. Your pick, have fun. We get the Iron Gauntlet all set up and Banner prepares himself. He snaps and we get a second to figure out that...
Guys. I think it worked.
I did exactly like we said.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I wish for everyone to come back. Everyone who is gone. Because of the stones. The gauntlet is literally in the shape of a monkey's paw. I don't know how that did not come to anybody. And I swear to God, I had the idea for a monkey's paw wish being what fixed the end of this movie coming out of the theater in February 2019, and I cannot believe that Patty Jenkins sniped my thoughts. And sure, in this scenario, Thanos does arrive at Earth from wherever he rematerialized from post-haste, but Hawkeye's wife is calling him so fast that she's basically still half dust when she hits dial. Fastest hands in the West. So the Sanctuary 2, that's literally the name of Thanos' ship,
My sanctuary,
destroys the Avengers compound and almost everything continues on as it does normally. Thanos' "where did that bring you? Back to me" doesn't even need to be changed. Do you see what I'm saying about him just being our time Thanos? In fact, I even want to keep his "I don't even know who you are" with Wanda because he's just such a pompous asshole who likes to pontificate that this little interaction means nothing to him. Not even the words he himself said. Now Gamora comes back. Nat doesn't. This is not my fault, I didn't write that part. And as stated before, I do not have a brain big enough to tackle the narrative treating an abusive father with so much OPOC realness as it does, so I do know that this rewrite is lacking. This textual critique of Thanos being an abusive piece of shit who did not actually love Gamora needed to happen in Infinity War, before those children walked out of the theater with their own father. Oh. Sorry, I did not realize how unhinged I looked while I was saying that. Just quirky little me talking about abuse in our media and how it's portrayed. So there is never going to be enough in this rewrite to ever adequately address that. The best I can come up with is to maybe move the Fury dusting to a mid-credit scene and have the final credit be Gamora forlornly looking out into the soul realm. And it's just fine, you guys. She's on vacation. She's just waiting for Thanos to get his comeuppance. Do you think if she tanned, she would get a darker shade of green? Or... So Gamora is back. And if you wanted to keep the she regressed and needs to re-go through the character development that she had gained previously, you could have her still be a little wonky from being in the soul realm for so long, and she has to readjust to being her own person again. Maybe she has a message from Nat that she could give to somebody that would make me care about her. I don't want to not like the only female representation we had in the MCU for so long. I don't want to not like it. It just so happens that it sucks. For Gulliver's Travels. For Gulliver's Travels, we missed Emily Blunt, Black Widow. God damn it. Can you imagine? Like, just with the paychecks that you would be getting. Can you imagine? For Gulliver's Travels. Oh my god. I would hang Jack Black myself. He has nothing to do with it. I'm so sorry. But the main point of this rewrite is to give the Soul Stone some agency. The Soul Stone is different from the other stones in that it is not just some power to be wielded, but it has a kind of consciousness of its own. I mean, this is already set up in the way that the Soul Stone is the only one that needs a major sacrifice in order to obtain, and has this entire ritual, and an altar used to perform said ritual, and a spirit guide to help you perform the ritual on the altar that is needed to perform the ritual.
You might say it has a certain wisdom.
And being such a high omnipotent power grants it the ability to know that Thanos, objectively, does not love Gamora. Why else would it put him into contact with her in the Soul Realm just so she can grill him on? Was it worth it? Huh? Was it fucking worth it? The Soul Stone knows what is the true. I'm on a Wachowski binge right now. Leave me alone. These leggings? Man, these leggings were not meant for an adult body. So the Soul Stone knows that Thanos does not deserve it by sacrificing Gamora, but it says, alright, I'll play along, and takes Thanos through an exercise in punishment. So the entire time from when Thanos gets the Soul Stone to when he is ultimately dusted is just the Soul Stone fucking with him, because it knows that his soul is bad and impure and will be defeated by people who are good, and good. And you know, in case you wanted to ease some of the brain tension that you might have while watching the Gauntlet duology, you could view them through this headcanon. I do. I'm just trying to impart some wonderful little pieces of wisdom to help you live your life more fully and successfully. I'm the Soul Stone's most substantial stan. But how does this happen in a tangible way that we are able to see in this rewrite? So Gamora shows back up on the battlefield and she's still a little distant, and I am just going to slide Nando v Movies' rewrite right in here as well. What is it? I don't know. Maybe you're gonna have to go watch it for yourself. Yes, we get that the people who got the football were the billion-dollar makers in Spider-Man, who gets a pass because he's Spider-Man. But this story needs closure. And because this duology is Gamora's and Nebula's movies, they need to get the biggest scene at the end. So our true daddy saves us from our bad father. And as Thanos' troops are being dusted, two young girls walk up to him. The universe has judged you, and it has told you no. You fail because you love nothing. No one. And we get a good look between young Gamora and young Nebula, and they join hands as Thanos starts to melt down. Now, I think it would be a very nice contrasting moment for Thanos to truly lose it in his final moments. I mean, we can't have all of these movies end with him silently and solemnly sitting. And for a character who has arrogantly carried himself around in this soft-spoken, holier and mightier than thou attitude, I think it would be really cool if we found out that that was all just a front. 'Cause you know what? I don't believe that the Mad Titan would concede a legal and fair election complete and total universal defeat. Gotta, Fuck me, right? Okay. Yeah, this whole video was put together so that I could process, well, we had our own Thanos here today. Except here, 74 million people still voted for Thanos. Post-snap. Some people have chosen to process this through indies or Plague Tales or music. Me, doing it through Marvel movies. I know, I'm just so counterculture that I've shot the moon and arrived right back at popular culture. Marvel is our culture. Superhero stories are the new Greek myths. So okay, maybe I do have to spill my guts, because whatever strikes you at the time it strikes you is a deeply personal thing. So, that's right. So my little girl Trixie broke her leg in a very bad way in December. A dog has 2 bones in their hind leg and she snapped them clean in half and required a very major surgery to fix, and then had about 4 months of very intensive recovery. She's being held together by pins right now as we speak. Ooh! And that surgery, along with multiple follow-up visits to the vet, made paying for it an emotional toll, to say the least. But what really got into my brain was staying trapped with her. At least that's what that felt like, in one room for months on end. My room is on the 3rd floor, and I wasn't gonna make somebody carry her up 2 flights of stairs because she can't do them by herself, so I stayed down in my sister's room with her. And on top of already being locked in my house for 6 months already, restricting that to just one room really started to make me go stir crazy. Crazy! So bad. And then 9/11/2 happened. And so I was really not doing well up here. I thought I knew what doom scrolling was before. Yeah. But that was also around the time that I watched Endgame again. I have seen exactly one movie more than once in a theater, and that was not Endgame, so seeing it again was an experience. Remember that thing I said about watching the final battle at home to actually tell what was going on? That was very important to me. And watching it again at this particular time really put the first third of this movie in a starkly different light. Stark. You know, in a weird way, this movie was kind of made to be seen after a year that has felt like 5. That is, of course, if you can actually hype yourself up to get a release by the end. I think we've all been rewatching those audience reactions so much because we just want to feel things again.
Perhaps I treated you too harshly.
And I'm a person that loves things wholly and unabashedly. I weep openly at my Disney game all the time. But even I feel like an alien scientist examining this specimen like, oh, wouldn't it be great to feel things the way the humans do? I'm all sticky and I'm not happy about it. Where do you all live where you have such fun theaters? I've never seen a movie where the audience hasn't watched in absolute silent reverence. Except for this one man who was just completely enamored by the Snoop Dogg snail from the Snail movie. I hope he's doing okay. Or at least better than I am. And yet, I find myself always coming back to Ant-Man. Wandering through a barren world that he used to not be foreign to. I live out in the country, and I am very lucky that I haven't had the need to go out into the real world, for real. But when I eventually do, I have a feeling that Scott Lang will be with me. There's worse company I could get than Paul Rudd, I guess. So. But do you think we'll make a memorial for COVID? I would much rather, you know, have actual, tangible help for everyone than some stupid, costly, symbolic gesture, but like I said, I'm still hooked on this imagery.
Shit. Oh, God.
Who's ready to talk about daddies again? Come on, do we need to poll the country? Do we need to go door to door? Who has a good relationship with their dad? Huh. I don't want to spill any more on myself. Is your father purple or orange? I don't know, but they both have bad chins. Oh shit, was that me? So just like, during the time that the Gauntlet duology was released, I think it would be very hard for anyone to not associate Thanos with our real life genocidal father. The father-in-chief. The father of the free world. And that's not to say that this one president was so uber bad compared to the rest of them. Why else do you think no woman has ever been elected? Because all presidents are fathers. There's a reason why we don't call them the founding daddies. Even if we did elect a female president, you can tell she would be a real girl boss father. That's why Rodham was the only one that ever got close. Girl boss me with that pantsuit, mother. And now, I think it might be time to really get into the weeds. We'll bring it down from societal fathers to our personal fathers. You want to hear that from me, don't you? And I want to discuss this through what the women of my family call men of a certain age disease. I know, we're all queens, thanks for noticing. We've come to use this to describe the phenomenon that no matter what joyous, open, and loving boy you find, he will almost certainly, inevitably, reach an age where that all vanishes. And you might find someone that you think is the polar opposite of your father, but alas, the cycle repeats. And it's not like we don't know what causes this affliction. Men are the traditional breadwinners. You're getting into your middle age and you've worked hard your whole life and you're getting tired. Your kids are now grown and going off to college and you have to worry about how you're going to afford it because college does not cost as much as when you were young. And you have a mortgage that you've never been able to make a dent in, even though it's been years. And you live in a society that tells you that you don't have any emotions except for the limited outlets of anger, hunger, and horny. The three genders. And still, capitalism is betraying you. You have to fight so hard to keep your head above the rising tides, and it still never seems to make a difference. So, you take it out on the people who are supposed to be the closest to you, and you just end up this sad, angry husk of a person. And then you go out to buy a sports car to drive through the hole in your heart. And this is a very middle class, very white, very cis and het telling of the men of a certain age disease, and there are absolutely more intricacies to the tale. And that kind of makes the whole narcissism that's coming from the father sting a little more. What? You don't have the perspective from just above the waterline to see the people who are already drowning? I have great sympathy for fathers, I really do. I know where they come from. But I can't help but resent the fact that they don't try just a little harder to be daddies. Do you need a mom or something? And now that I am on the other side and have made peace with our concept of fathers, I think it is now time to turn to our Titanic father and apply what we've learned. He is a bad dad. He is the epitome of a father who sacrifices those who are supposed to be important. He is a slave to his own worst impulses. He has never been taught to love truly and unselfishly, to be soft and caring. He is a stand-in for every maleficent force you could possibly put a masculine name to, but there's at least one good thing that I do respect Thanos for. He taught me to go for the head.
I know you have found something. A sense of peace.
Okay, now you are going too far now.
So kiss me once and kiss me twice and kiss me 3 times. Cross the line. I don't like ending things sad, so here's some last minute ramblings. Did you know that Marvel AMVs are like really cool? They've been doing this trend where the editors will keep the punch and impact sound effects and will put them in time to the beat, so it all just becomes rhythmic fighting. It's very satisfying, and you should check it out if that intrigues you at all. I even put together a list of some of my favorites to help you get started on your little algorithm there. Please, I want the AMV renaissance to happen so bad. Although we probably need YouTube's copyright bullshit to get sorted for that to happen. Do you want to know something about how long it takes for me to make my videos? I started planning this in January
of 2021.
And I thought, oh, WandaVision's coming out. The MCU is back. It'll be topical. Oh, who are we kidding? I still have ideas from when I started the channel like 3 years ago. And now we are at the end of the entirety of the first phase of the Marvel TV shows, including its latest, What If?, which was particularly devastating to me because episode 2 blew this entire video out of the water. That's right, this thing is dead on arrival. Why is that, you ask? Good Thanos. Good Thanos is good. Even if, come on guys, genocide is sometimes kind of warranted. Thanos gives off the same vibe as like that one stock anime character that's part of the friend group but is actually, you know, just like a serial sexual assaulter. Every single person wants Mineta dead. I want that fruit squashed. Want that grape crushed. But the real thing that interests me that we can put in this framework of fathers and daddies, and if it is in the MCU it makes me cry, it's gonna be about Gamora and or Nebula. Or Yondu. Or Rocket. The only ones that matter. The 4 genders. Was that 4 people? Yeah. Thanos steps up to make it up to Nebula. He offers himself to protect her.
Not crazy. Mad.
Turn down for dads. And I'm sorry, but this image of a big honking dad holding his daughter safely is a weakness. There's talk of counseling.
I've been trying to get them into counseling.
And we are pointed towards a better future between them.
Oh, Dad!
Reconciliation is possible! And I also think that it's important that we remember that the Ubervater was defeated before he even did anything by the relentless optimism of black communism.
What makes you think T'Challa's communist?
Well, if you grew up in Wakanda, which is a very obvious communist utopia.
What makes you think Wakanda's communist?
Well, I didn't really see any poor populating the streets of Burn and Zana.
But it's just as you said. Wakanda's a utopia, a fictional idea of what a country of the future could.
What are you reaching for in your back pocket? Oh no! I've been owned so hard, I'm just disappearing. And it is only under this particularly black, particularly communist guidance that we get a Marvel timeline that has every best possible outcome happen. Even incels like Taserface are likable. And dare I even say, fuckable.
We were running.
And there are quite a few little nuggets that spark joy in this little commie brain. Like, almost no one is beyond saving. Even those closest to falling off the deep end can be pulled back just by talking to them.
Sometimes the best weapon in your arsenal is just a good argument.
Always remember who the real target is.
We've been picking pockets for loose coins. If we truly want to change the galaxy, then it's time we rob the bank.
The commitment to others is imperative.
Ain't no way in hell I was gonna leave here without my kid.
Don't do slavery unless you want to have a people's revolt on your hands.
Where I come from, history has never looked kindly on those who locked men in cages.
Karina, no. No, stay, stop.
They even managed to touch on bad fathers. And have you noticed that I've been using fatherhood almost interchangeably with fascism?
Stop and think I took care of all of you. I put a roof over your heads. Oh, karma.
And perhaps most importantly,
all this suffering, and for what?
My guess, he's compensating for something big. Yeah, or small, if you catch my drift.
all fascists have small dicks! And if we follow these teachings, perhaps we will be able to turn this nothing, this barren nowhere, into a paradise teeming with life and fruitful abundance for all. So yeah, when you turn your fathers into daddies, everybody wins. Redistribute the daddies. And I would like to close this with one final thought. Because of course, superhero stories are the new Miz. That means that there's one particular aspect of superhero-dom that we apparently value very highly as humans. And I think that is their dedication to people. To the people they love, to their fellow human. No matter the distance in the relationship, we all want to be the hero that will save someone. And I think it exemplifies the core of humanity to do for others in a snap. Not even a moment of hesitation, regardless of any peril that it will put you in yourself. And I think if you look at the MCU, which is just the most accessible, easiest and quickest slop that you can art feed yourself. Even that has an undeniable love for humanity. I mean, they're saving the universe. How much more love could you get? And this all comes down to, why are we so obsessed with people who are willing to put their whole lives on the line like that? Well, it seems like we're trying to answer the question, why do we like people that are good?